Okay,
Okay.
so this is a session on basics of pixel art. So you can start.
All right. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this workshop on the basics of pixel art by the Game Development Society at IIT Kanpur. So in this workshop, we'll be talking about how you can implement some basic pixel art and how you can get into it. Also, I urge all of you to work alongside because this is a workshop. So yeah, you should also create these pixel arts alongside with us. So in the beginning, we'll have this short theory, just a basic talk on what pixel art actually is. I promise to keep it short because who wants to be bored with theory? So firstly, what is art? Well, art can be basically defined as whatever you see in the in a game, whatever you see on the screen, that is basically art, and it's the visual aspect of the game. So obviously, it's integral to the game. Now, based on how we uh, render this art onto the screen, it can be broadly divided into two types. One is 2D games and one is 3D games. Now, an important distinction that is to be made here is that 2D game does not mean that we cannot move in the 3 degrees of freedom. Similarly, 3D games does not mean that we'll be able to move in the 3 degrees of freedom. That's an entirely different concept. The distinction between 2D and 3D games lies in the way the images are rendered onto the screen. So for 2D game, what is used as static images, which are called sprites, and these are just layered onto the screen and then rendered onto the screen. While in the case of 3D games, we use cameras and also we obtain vertex data from the various objects in the game, and the GPU then performs millions and millions of calculations, and finally we see the output onto the screen. So yeah, it's just basically a lot of maths. And so, as I said earlier, that a 2D game does not mean it's only motion in 2D. So, for example, Super Mario Bros. It's a 2D game, and it is it's just 2D motion. But in case of this Final Fantasy Tactics, it's 2D, but the motion is 3D. Likewise, Breath of the Wild is a 3D game with 3D motion, but this Metroid Dread is a 3D game, but it has 2D motion. So they're two entirely different concepts. Now, why do we even want to make a game in 2D? Well, historically speaking, hardware used to be bad. Like you wouldn't expect Atari or Atari 2600 to run what say like God of War Ragnarok or your Nokia 3310 to run PUBG Mobile. So basically hardware was bad, but now it's good and it's increasing at an alarming rate. So now we're basically able to go with these powerful 3D simulations and 3D art. But basically hardware was not powerful enough, so people had to stick to these 2D games. And I'd like to I'd like to digress here and talk about Wolfenstein and Doom. These were actually 2D games, but if you've actually played any of these games, you'd see that if the enemy was in front of you but above you, that is in the z-axis, it was above you, and even if you shot in front of you, then you would kill the enemy. So this is actually because there is no concept of the z-axis in 2D. It's all an illusion, and this process was done using something known as raycasting that was employed by these good people at id Software. And there's a link at the end of this presentation which talks how they were able to do this, and it's really an ingenious way in which they were able to create this 3D environment in a 2D game. So I would urge you to look into it. It's just very pleasing, and how ingenious they came up with this technique. So anyways, nowadays the choice of 2D games is basically an aesthetic choice. So yeah, this is basically the 2D games, earlier 2D games, which were born out of necessity. They couldn't really do anything other than this. But this is some early examples of 3D games. So as you can see, the polygon count is very low. It looks kind of dull. But nowadays, yeah, so this is a 3D game and it looks absolutely stunning. And sometimes, and these are the 2D games nowadays. And yeah, so it's just an aesthetic choice. Nothing is better. Like 3D is better than 2D. There is nothing objective about it. And you can also combine both of them together. There is no problem in that. So I'll hand it over to Deepak now, who will talk about how and why pixel art is used. So Deepak.
So hello guys, myself Deepak Sangle. I will be presenting why we should use pixel art. So now first of all, we will see the difference between raster and vector graphics. So these are two images. They are in the left bottom side. You can see a raster image and a vector image, and you can see right away the difference between them. Well, technically speaking, raster images are made up of pixels, and each pixel has got a unique color to it. And whereas a vector image has been made up of mathematical equations. Like you can see, these are straight lines, some of are cube, or some other are like circle. So these are made up of mathematical equations. Whereas the raster images are something that you can take a photo from your mobile camera or a screenshot. Everything that you can just in the day-to-day life, you can see these are the raster images. Now, one more important point, what is the advantage of vector images over the raster images? So can you take on the next slide? Also, yeah, so here you can see this is the Twitter logo. Now the right hand side is a raster image and the left hand side is a vector image. Now you can see if we enlarge an image, a small image into a large image, you can see this is a blurry effect is coming out here. Well, the reason is obvious that the pixel that the raster images are made of pixels, and if you increase the pixels, it will blur out. Whereas in the vector images, as you can see, it isn't blurred out at all. The reason is they are made up of mathematical equations. And even though we increase their size, the mathematical equation won't change, and thus their quality, it remains the same. So yeah, so the main advantage of vector images is that first of all, it is very less in size. Like vector images are just in KBs, very few KBs, whereas raster images are in like MB, like 2 to 3 MB photos. Also, raster images are majorly edited in for software like Photoshop, Adobe Photoshops, whereas the vector images are mainly made in Adobe Illustrator. This is one of the difference between them. Now, please, Sam, can you see the next slide? So, what is pixel art basically? So, pixel art is just one other type of art in which we edit and we make an art at a pixel level. Like you must have done edit your photos, but that were in like inches or centimeter levels, right? We don't do that in pixel level. So in pixel art, we create an art on a pixel levels. That is, we emphasize on a smaller and smaller detail as well. Also, pixel art is something where some people will say why we use pixel art and all so this is just an aesthetic choice. In some places, as pixel art is useful. In some places, it is not useful. So it is an aesthetic choice of which art we should use. Whether it's just high resolution sprites, that is that we show the raster images. Whether we should use that images or we should use a pixel art image is completely dependent on users. And now, what is pixel art technically? So first of all, I will like say that pixel art is made in editors like Adobe Photoshop, which we will be using today. Also, there are specific software like Aspirite, or there are online editor also. You can see in the chat box the link for the online editor where you can make pixel art here. Also, pixel art is always made in a canvas. Okay, so it can be a 16 by 16 canvas or 32 by 32 canvas, and each canvas has a like 16 for we take an example of 16 by 16 canvas. There may be 16 rows and 16 column, and each cell will be a pixel, and each pixel will have a particular color to it. And this combination of this pixel will create a complete pixel art, which you just saw in the previous slide. So this is it. I would like to show now. I would like to give to Nakul, who will carry on from this. Hello, Nakul.
Okay, so there are basically three types of pixel art. So as my friends explained, I'm going to now carry this on further. So first is the 1-bit pixel art. This has only two colors, black and white, and monochromatic and 8-bit. These are basically the three types in which we classify pixel art. So next slide, please. Yeah, so as you can see there, the 1-bit one, it was used in earlier games, like you can see Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue. Those games had majorly they had 1-bit or monochrome type of pixel art, since because of the hardware limitations. And you can see the 8-bit type of pixel art. It has a wider range of color palette and shading to emphasize on the shapes and the geometry of the scene. Next slide, please. Okay, so the canvas size determines the what kind of pixel art that we make. So as you can see, there are roughly three pixel art sizes: 128, 64, 32, and 16. And as we go on from 128 to 16, the details decreases, but and similarly the work that is put into it to draw the image, that also decreases. and 16, it's we cannot say that 128-bit is better than 16. For both of them have different uses. Like 128 can be used where the loading screen, or in the loading screen, or like in a cut scene where we have to show the details of what is happening, or 16-bit can be shown as a sprite in the world generation or in the map. Like you can consider the example of Pokemon or Legend of Zelda, earlier games that were used to happen. Next slide. Okay, so now that you saw the earlier images, since that pixel art has come a very long way, you can see these are very cool examples of pixel art: Enter the Gungeon, Shovel Knight, Undertale. For if you want to make such pixel art, or if you want to learn how to make such pixel art and meet some pixel artists, you can visit ArtStation. Just search pixel art in the search box. You will meet a variety of some very good artists who have been in the industry doing pixel art since a very long time. And as you can see, the concept of pixel art has come a very long way since then. Enter the Gungeon, as you can see, this is a third-person player, and Shovel Knight. Both of them have different concepts of pixel art. Like Enter the Gungeon is, we can say that the art style is bit more towards 2.5D. And next slide, please. Okay, so basic implementation. So the software that we use is Photoshop, GIMP, Sprite, Pixel Art. Online editors are also available. For this session, we are going to use Photoshop. You can use Sprite or Pixel Art online. If you don't have Photoshop installed, that is a good that's a good point of pixel art, that you can make it anywhere or in any browser or in any system that you like. So it gives a kind of freedom to the artist. Next slide. Common tools available. We are going to only use these 4 tools: pen, eraser, bucket, and move and select tools. As we go along with the session, you will be familiarized with what we are going to use these tools for. I think the names are suggestive enough to tell what we are going to use these tools for. And okay, now let's start the session, the workshop. Art 1
Yes.
torch. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be implementing this art 1, which will be a torch. And as you can see, this is the the overview of what we're aiming for. So let's open up Photoshop. I hope my screen is visible. Can somebody confirm that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's visible. Fine. So when you open Photoshop, this is the first thing that you'll be greeted with. Of course, these won't be there. So yeah, you go for, you create a new document, go to print, choose any random paper size, doesn't matter. So come over here and select pixels, because we want to make pixel art based on the canvas size, which will be in pixels, obviously. So this torch implementation will be in a canvas of size 32 cross 32. So let's create this document. And yeah, so here we are with our canvas. It's tiny, as you can see, which is what one would expect since we are in since we're working on the scale of pixels. Now let's look at the first tool. This is the brush tool. So when you first paint, you'll notice some weird peculiarities. Firstly, there's this weird anti-aliasing or gradient effect. This is actually done, it is automatically done by Photoshop. And to get rid of this, what you have to do is come over here in the brush section and select the pencil tool. So now, yeah, so select the pencil tool, and when you first select it, you will get something like this. So yeah, now the anti-aliasing is not there, so that's cool, but it's a little fat, so we have to fix that also. So to fix that, you can right click and it'll open up the properties of this pencil tool, and you can make the size 1 pixel, so it will now be just 1 pixel. Now we also need to use the eraser tool to it's obvious what the eraser tool should do. So again, if you rub it, you see that there is this gradient effect, and we have to get rid of that. To do so, you come up to the top of the ribbon, and over here in the mode, you have to select pencil. So now it will cleanly erase whatever we do. And at the same time, this eraser size should be made 1 pixel so that we can work on a pixel by pixel basis. Now, another problem that is apparent is that the pixels are not clear, like the pixel locations are not clear. To fix this, one can select like a gray color. So like somewhere along here. And once you select this gray color, press Alt plus Delete. Or if you're on Mac, it's Command plus Delete, I think. Yeah, but so basically the grid, you can see the grid with the color that we selected as the backdrop. So this will give us a much clearer vision on the pixel and how we can go about making our art. So at the same time, over here, add a new layer. And this will basically be our art layer where we will do all of our art. So now let's go on to making the main art. So the first thing that we should do is create an outline or a silhouette of the object that we are going for. Now, in TA 101, there was this theorem, which I guess approximately only 1% of people among us would remember, that any complicated component can be broken up into some very simple shapes like a hexagon, circle, squares, and rectangles, and we'll work and we'll take a similar approach to pixel art. So what we are going for here is a torch, and a torch is basically what, a stick with fire on it. So what we can do is we can assume that the stick is a rectangle for now and the flame is a sphere, or I mean a circle. So the main purpose of this step is to actually get the proportions right. So suppose, wait, let me select a proper color. So I'm just going to select black for whatever, for the outlining on the silhouette. So let's just make a very rough outline of what we want. So this is the like stick, and let's add a circle on top of it. As you can see, this kind of looks not good. The proportions are a little messed up, so we should work on that and fix it. So like I'll make this a little bigger, and that looks about right. So yeah, that's basically the first step, is creating a proper proportion or proportioning it properly. So now let's move on to adding details. So the stick that I want it to taper inwards, otherwise it looks kind of dull. So to do so, we can just go along random intervals and like taper it inside. So let's go here and just taper it down, and that looks about right. So let's just go with that. Now the stick is done, and now it's time to create the fire. So for the fire, what I want to do is create some asymmetrical elements to it, because it's fire and nature is usually asymmetrical. So let's just rid of this a little bit and go with a kind of curling fire like that. So this looks kind of right. Now I want to stress one thing is, suppose I had done this differently. Suppose like I shifted this side by 1 pixel, and it looks kind of weird now, kind of bloated right now. And similarly, if I had done it like this, like if I had kept it inside, again, this looks extremely weird now. So the thing about pixel art is that you literally control every single pixel. So every pixel counts, and you have to make sure that each and every pixel that you put on the canvas has a purpose. So yeah, so in pixel art, every pixel counts. I mean, yeah. And now this is the rough shape, but it still looks a little cluttered, and that is because of these double edges here. So what one should do is remove these double edges, so the places where these lines are getting doubled down on each other. And when you do that, you'll see that the drawing looks a lot less cluttered and a lot cleaner. So let's and over here also, and yeah, so now it looks a lot less cluttered and a lot better in my opinion. So yeah, that's more or less it. Now one can add, one has to add like the distinction between the flame and the stick, and I'll do so by just coloring the stick black. So I'll just color this and fill this in black. And for the flame, I'll just fill it in with white. So yeah, and I would use the fill tool, but I don't know how. I'm a little I'm a little stupid, but yeah, forgive me for that. And now this looks fine, but looks like the fire is kind of pasted onto the stick. So I'd like to make it so that it's like flowing into this handle. So like something like that. So yeah, I guess it looks a lot better right now. So this is basically the first step to your pixel art, where you have to create the silhouette and the distinctions between the two portions. And As for shading and coloring, that will be done by Nakul and Deepak after me. So yeah, thank you for listening to me, and Deepak, please take over.
Thank you, sir. I will be sharing my screen. Just wait. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Hello.
Huh.
Okay,
Yes.
so now I will be making a pumpkin here. I can see this. I have gotten a reference image here. The first step to make any more shape or any model pixel art is to have a reference image, because you can't just made anything without a reference image. So I am having this, which I have created myself, but you can have it have this pumpkin image. Now how to go in this, how to have a approach to make this pumpkin. So well, you can see here, well excluding this top part, you can see there is a vertical symmetry between left and right part. Okay, excluding this colors and the top part, you can see this vertical symmetry. So what we're gonna do is just make the left portion of this pumpkin, and then we're gonna invert this, invert it to make the right portion. So this is just a technique so as to save time in the in this modeling of this pumpkin. So well, first of all, I would like to have grades. So in the view section, in the show, you can have these grades. So now I got grades. Shortcuts are for B for brush tool, E for erase tool, and G for paint bucket tool. Okay, that's simple. Now we will choose B, brush tool, and I'm gonna model this half of the circle first of all. So just zoom by Alt and arrow, Alt and middle mouse button, and you can see this is color because this is the color which is happening. So we can just select a black color and pressing Ctrl Z now, and now we can just model it along the pixels. So I'm gonna make a half circle. It doesn't have to be like exact, and just a random half circle which you can think of, something just like this. Like this. If you have something like this, like if you mistake something, there is two options. First, you can just press Ctrl Z, or you can just use you can just press E to erase this of the portion. Okay, wait. Okay, so now selecting B, just make a little bit of this like this. Now I will be making this top portion like this, and here you can see this is this portion. And also now one thing that you should keep in mind that we're gonna be invert this. Okay, so the line should be perfect. Like if this is the pixel, if this is the line along which we are gonna invert, so all the art should be along inside this line. So we have to just restrict ourselves to this. We have to restrict our modeling to just this of the part, this section of the circle. So this is the main circle. Now you can invert it, or you can increase details in it, and then you can invert it as well. So I'm just increasing some details like these details. This is some eye which I created. This is like pressing Ctrl Z, or you can press E as well to erase that as well. It's your choice to do what you want to do. Something like this. We want to make a nose of it, so we will just make a half triangular, and just when we invert it, it will become a full triangular. Same along with the smile, we'll make us some creepy half smile like this. So this is portion like something like this also remaining. So you can see this is the art we have created. Now we have to just invert it, or we can also create the whole of the image as well. It's up to you. To save time, we will just I will just make a copy of it. Now we can see there are two layers of it. You can see there are two layers of it. So, and after pressing Ctrl T, we can let us say sorry, right, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, just hide this layer for some time, and something like this will be enough. Right. Yep. So this is it. Now Now we can just see this. Well, you can see these are two layers. So this is one upon the other. You can just press E, right click on the surface, increase the size, something like it's still very big. It's still big, something like this. Again, what I'm basically doing is erasing this portion. Okay, is erasing this portion of the layer. All right, and after that I am unhiding this object again. Okay, so this layer was beneath this layer, so I was unhiding that, and you can see this pumpkin is created. Okay, so its basic shape has been created, something like this. Okay, we can make changes over here as well, but before making any changes now, we should merge these two layers. Okay, so selecting both this layer, pressing right click and clicking on merge layers, we can merge this two layer, and now this is one layer. Okay, so now there is something top which is remaining. So again pressing B and making something like this. It's your choice, something variable like this. This is stop. You can also make some changes like this here, some other changes as well, and you can see this is our basic modeling which I have finished. All right, now we have to make the coloring of it. So for coloring, well, as Soham did, we can use paintbrush and we can choose any color from it, and we can just do this, or we can do what we can do is use press G to use paint bucket tool and paint all over it. Okay, so first of all we should choose the color. Well, this color and this color looks similar, but there is one other option, that is this is the dropper option. We can just click here on our reference image, and the image and the color will automatically get chosen. Like if I choose something like this, and now if I click here, you can see that exact color code has been chosen. Now we press OK, and now let me that scene is here. Okay, so now if you press here, you can see it has a bleeding effect. The reason is that Photoshop is trying to make it something like curve, make a gradient effect, because it is in pixel, right? But Photoshop doesn't know we are making pixel art. So what we can do is uncheck this option, anti-aliasing option, and when we click here, we can see it has perfectly blended with it. Now it is a close shape, so it will not fill. So you have to manually fill it. So now it has been filled completely. Now for the top layer, top of it, you can simply choose this color, and we can again fill it. So you can see it is filled. So this is the main coloring portion of our pumpkin. Now the shading portion. Well, for shading portion, first for main process is to just select the color. You can see you can select the color like this simply. And what now we can't just like click here, because it will fill it entirely. So now we can use brush tool, as Soham did in last, and we have to do it by 1 pixel by pixel. Okay, so we have to do it pixel by pixel. Well, but there is one another way to do it. What is that? Is that we can just create a boundary of this. Okay, so I will just show you now. I will just create a boundary of our pixel art like this, and now we have to fill this portion as well. So now the one way is just to use brush tool, or other way is to press G to use paint bucket tool, and you can smartly fill all the portion here as well. There must be just a boundary over here. So right, this is our pumpkin which I created in the less than just 5 minutes, and it is okay. Now one more thing that you should do. Okay, selecting this layer, and you can see your image size. Okay, so when we export this image, okay, so when we export the image as PNG or JPG, you will find this image to be this much size. Okay, so you have to increase the size, something like 270 or something 320 is good, I think. So this is the image size. You can just scale it up, and you can see this is our pixel art. You can just hide the grids now for a moment. You can see this is a pumpkin which I created in just less than 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, I think. So that's it, I guess. We have learned about the shading here, modeling as well. Okay, so that's it, I guess. Now the next art will be presented by Nakul. He will be making a bat here, bat there. Okay, sir. Thank you. Nakul, you can continue now.
Okay, just a minute.
Okay, I will just stop it.
Okay, so right now I have done most of the manual work by myself so as to save time, because most of it was already done by my friends, like the basic outline and how to fill in the base colors. So going on, so as to be consistent with the theme, I'm going to make a zoo bat here, like the Halloween theme. My friend made a pumpkin and a torch earlier. So I've selected this color. You can select any color from this color palette that we have on in this image of Zubat that we have loaded in as a reference. Just by hold Alt, we get this dropper option and select this base color. So as you can see, I have already filled in the base color in this and also you will see that I go for a different approach when making pixel art. Like I want this raw transparent PNG background. It gives me a, it's a personal choice. You can do whatever you want. There's no such thing as constant work. Like you can either do my way or do their way. It's the output is just going the same. Don't worry. So what we have here is I've traced an outline of the bat that I'm going to make, and furthermore that I've also filled in the base color along the border lines, so as to save a bit time and tell you how to shade uh, 8-bit or more 8-bit images or images with multiple colors in the palette. Okay, so just let me switch this. We'll just increase the size of the brush here. Also, instead of filling it by leaving the filling process on the computer like my friends did, I like to go for a much more manual approach so as to give it a much more organic feel, since we are making an organic object. Brush size 4. Oh, okay, that's good. So let's just fill in the base color in the places that are needed right now. Should I decrease? Yeah, I should decrease this. Much better. So as you can see in this image, we have basically 4 or 5 basic colors that are filled in a certain way that goes along with the shading of the image. Like as you can see here, we have a lighter color in this in the head part, in the ear part, and we have a darker shade of colors in this part, which basically tells us that in the world that this bat was created, the light was coming in from this source, like this direction, the left side, and on this direction uh, there was basically no light. So we have much more shadows here and more emphasis on lights here. So that's what we are basically going to do. So okay, yeah. So let's just fill this. When making pixel art, you can choose to make sprite sheets, because usually we use sprite sheets to import in game engines like Unity. Unity is very good at making 2D games. You can just import sprite sheets, cut them up, and make 2D animations out of it. That's just how simple it is. Wings down, wings up. That gives you an animation, 2D animation of a bat flying. So let's just fill in the base colors for now. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, almost done, and then we'll proceed forward to the shading portion of the session. Yeah, let's move this here. Also, you may notice that only using these 4 or 5 tools, we are making what we want. So in a way, pixel art is less technical and more creative of an art in any form of software that you can see. Like using Blender, it requires a bit of technical skill for using it. Using Maya or Autodesk, they also require much more technical skills. But you can just learn these 4 tools, not even learn, get familiarized with them, and voila, you're making 3D pixel art in no time. Okay, so the base colors have been filled out in our image. Now we are left with the shading and the secondary colors. So I'm going to select this color for the wings here. Let's zoom in and increase the pixel size. So like in this image, as you can see, let me enlarge, no, this, okay, that's the maximum size. So in this image, as you can see, this part, it has 2 colors, like a darker shade and a lighter shade. This emphasizes the darker shade is here to emphasize the cavities. Like in real life, as you or as you might have seen in movies or television, this part of a bat. This usually contains a bones, and there is a usually a small little cavity, and this wing that we have here. Between that, there is a small cavity there. So this darker shade of purple emphasizes that cavity. Okay. So yeah, you can just change up the brush size to fill it in quickly. I like to do it this way because it gives me more control at what I'm doing. Let's change it that way, and yeah, that is done almost half of it. Let's change this to black. Yeah. By the way, you can change the color that you have by pressing X. See, it changes up. You can follow along with this workshop, since this is a workshop and not a lecture. Yeah. So now that we have shaded this wing, we are going to choose a secondary color. Select from this palette and just fill this in there. So as you can see, just by filling this one single line, the wing looks much better than it was looking just a second ago. That's how powerful pixel art is. Like just by adding some small lines here and there, you can create image or illusion of shadows and lights. In this image, in this reference image that we have, you can see the same thing. We have some lighter colors here, some darker colors there. That's all there is to it. Nothing more complicated. And okay, so select this, and yeah, or maybe let's load in the different image. Okay, so let's do it like that. Now we are going to make some darker parts on its tail. You have to do nothing but just press Alt, select the color that you want from this palette, and just do it here. By the way, this image I made earlier. You can also see in the PPT that we may give you after the presentation. We may or may not, but this I made earlier, and now just I'm showing you how I made it. Yeah. So that suffices for that area. And there it is. The body has been shaded. The wings remain. Bit of there, a bit of pixels there. And it's almost, and you, as you can see, the image starting to look much better than it was just a few minutes ago. Now let's pick up some lighter colors from here. Shade these tips of the wings that we have. This will look much better now. One more thing that you have to keep in mind while giving shading or playing with the light colors and dark colors to emphasize the lights and shadows of your image is that you have to keep in mind the geometry of what you are making, like geometry and the topology of what you're making. Like this area is little bit raised, so it will catch much more light than the wings that are beneath them. So a little dark area there and dark areas there, and not much more to do in the wings part now. And this wing now. Okay, so let's increase this brush size just a bit. That's good. And we're making it. Minimize that. Okay. Yeah, that looks nice. The black color. Maybe a little bit less. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so let's load that image in once again. Now the darker areas of the wings. So as you may see that there is a portion in the wings like which will appear here somewhere around here, which gives the impression that there is a bone underneath in the wing. So now we are going to make that. Let's change this. We fill this small areas in. Also, this gives a much more organic feel than if we just let the computer do the work. Much more organic and much more random, just like we see in nature. So let's reduce that a bit there. And yeah, that looks about nice. Okay, so yeah, so that's the curve of the bone. And switch the colors, select that from the color palette. Yeah, within somewhat 30 minutes you are making pixel art. Like if you follow along this session, within 30 minutes you are making pixel art that you like or that you want. Just be aware that you need to use some reference images in the beginning, like whatever art you're making. That surely helps to go along. And yeah, that looks about nice. Okay, so what's left are the ears and the mouth. That's not much to do. Just what we did earlier, just a little different area. So a little different shading than what we did earlier. Let's keep this in and okay. So the shading in the ears is going to be a little different since the ears are oriented in different directions. Like basically this one's facing to the darker part of our environment that the image is going to be in, and this one is facing towards from where the light is coming from, like this where the light comes in, and this is where the most of the shadows will be, as you can see in the we have did earlier. So let's erase those arrows, retrace those border lines. Yeah, that looks nice. Okay, select the darker shade once again so that we give an impression of the shadows that they have here. Just remember that when you're making 8-bit or a higher resolution image in a pixel art, make sure that you give depth to whatever you're making, like darker shades and lighter shades. This gives depth to whatever I'm making, and not just a flat monochromatic or image. Overall, that's the whole point of using more than one colors. It gives an image which is not flat. It emphasizes the geometry and the shapes of the thing that you're making. Yeah, that's about right. The ears are almost done. So should I select that? Oh no. Let's move that here. Now let's decrease the opacity a little bit, just to give the impression that this is the shadow that you can see here is not that sharp. It's just blending in a little bit. And no, that is not really there. We need sharp shadows here. Okay. Yeah. The maybe that was not. Yeah, that looks nice. That looks about good. Now let's make the mouth. So while making the mouth, you can make either red or either black. Since I'm making a bat and it is a large cavernous mouth, I'm going for a blacker shade, since it's keeps in consistency with the theme that I'm making. Also, I'd made that image earlier, so that's why I'm going with black. You may choose red. It's up to you. I'll just fill that color in here. And yeah, that's done. Okay. Without changing the color, you can just reduce the opacity, or maybe not. If you want to blend in the shapes, select a lighter color, much lighter. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So somewhere there gives a good impression of the mouth, much more better. One here, 1 pixel. Okay, so now on with the fangs. Fangs, so another thing that you may notice is these fangs are nothing but just 3 pixels of different color, and that's enough if you're going to make something with less details. You don't need to stress it out too much, like making intricate shapes, uh, like in a digital painting or somewhat. Just let it be a little rough. That's the main basics. That's the main essence of pixel art. Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah. And another fang here. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, that looks about nice. Okay, so now on with the second ear. Let's increase the pixel size. So we are almost done with the bat in the wings down position now. Just this much. Shading left. Somewhere on the ears too. That looks nice. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, in less than about 15 minutes, we completed 15 or say 20 minutes, we completed the bat. It looks nice for a 2D game. You can use this in your if you're making a ROM hack or whatever. So similarly, you can make the same bat in a wings up position, import that to Unity, and then just use that as a sprite sheet. So basically, that's how we make sprite sheets for Unity or any 2D game that we have. Okay. So I think that should be enough. Like this is just mechanical work now. If we're going to make this along with that, since the shading and all the other aspects of the image are same, like light is coming from this side and shadows are forming on this side. Yeah, so that's it for this image. And Soham.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, so guys, this is a beautiful example of pixel art made by our secretary of the Game Dev Society. His name is Prakhar. You can participate in events such as Render Mondays. Give us pixel arts or whatever. And in the next slide, Swam. Yeah. So we have compiled some resources for you. Pixel art, where to start the ultimate pixel art tutorial. So there are tons of tutorials. We have some hand-picked some tutorials for you. You can pick any of them and just start making pixel art. So yeah. Yeah, also we don't own the NFT. Also, you can start asking questions if you have any. Just put them in the chat box, or we are going to upload it on the YouTube and share the link with you on our Discord server. So you can follow us on there too. So thank you guys. That's it. Any questions if you have left, you can ask us in the chat box.